Here is one such occasion in Proverbs chapter 6, verses 1 to 5. From this scripture text, I want to address a pitfall that we all need to be careful about: putting up surety or guarantee for someone else's overextended financial debt. 3 questions I would like to address in relation to this. Number 1, what is this overextended financial debt? Number 2, if you are trapped in it, what should you do? And number 3, why must you get out of it at all costs? Before I answer those questions, let me first clarify what surety is and its implication. Surety basically means becoming legally liable for the debts or default of another person. By becoming surety, you are legally obligating yourself to pay the debt if that other person fails to pay or unwilling to pay. Now, Proverbs chapter 6, verse 1 warns us not to put up security for our neighbor. If you allow yourself to become surety, you are actually allowing yourself to become trapped in the words of your mouth. That's what verse 2 is saying. And by the vow of commitment you have taken, whereby you have pledged yourself to be responsible for someone else's debt, you have fallen into the hand of your neighbor. That's verse 3. In other words, you have placed yourself in bondage to your neighbor. How? By obligating yourself to be accountable for his financial debts. That's the implication. Now, this is very practical advice back then, and I believe is also relevant to us today, when so many unwittingly co-sign for someone else's debt due to that person's insufficient credit. It is a wise instruction. Why? Because if the borrower is a friend and defaults, friendship is harmed. If you, the co-signer, you may even be encouraging an inappropriate expenditure. Your good name and credit record is also at risk. Your financial support to your family may suffer. You may not even have the means to pay the debts if it befalls you. So this is a serious matter, and Solomon is warning his son against it, putting up surety for someone else. Now, having said that, we also need to be clear, what is this overextended financial debt that we are warned not to act as surety? And the way I want to approach to answer this is first to tell you what this overextended financial debt is not about, and then I'll tell you what it is about. In order to understand what this overextended financial debt is not about, we need to understand a little bit about the historical context. Now, in those days, the merchants of Tyre and Sidon seem to have discovered the value of credit as an element of wealth. So a man might obtain goods or escape the pressure of a creditor until a more convenient season, or obtain a loan for more favorable terms by finding security. So to give security might be one of the kindest gestures that a friend would do to another person. However, with the legitimate system of credit that sprang up in later years, a fraudulent counterfeit emerged. The prohibition or Jewish moneylenders, sometimes you find it described as the stranger, they were ready to make loans to the spendthrift. Now, a spendthrift is someone who spends money in a callous or wasteful way. So the moneylenders, they were willing, ever so eager, to find a companion, and sometimes you read about it as the friend, who would become a surety. Now, to execute a surety in those days is really easy. All it takes is merely a form. Just write a few words, just clasping of the hands as a token that the obligation was accepted, and that was all. It would seem too unfriendly not to refuse that. So this is the context in Solomon's day. Now, today in our vast system of finance, people borrow money for many reasons. Many of them are legitimate reasons. For instance, you buy big item assets like a house, a car, to pay for your children's education, to finance a business venture, which unless you're a really wealthy man, you might need to borrow money. And often, in those circumstances, many a times they do require guarantor or maybe some form of collateral. Now, the Bible does not absolutely forbid all forms of borrowings, but strongly warns against it. For example, in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7, it says, "The borrower is the slave of the lender." So if you borrow, you are the slave of the lender.